Hi there. I see someone's entered the room. So, welcome everyone. My name is Farnia Fresnel, and today we're here to deliver a refreshing and insightful, just in time workday session meant to set you up with micro learnings for greater productivity. And our session today is entitled Leadership COGS, or Accelerate Your Accountability. And before we just jump in, I just want to tell you a little bit about me. Again, my name is Farnia Fresnel, and after years as a Fortune 100 senior global leader in financial services and in consulting, I just realized that there was a gap in my understanding. I'm a first-gen systems engineer trained in business, and I totally knew process and I knew technology inside and out. Yet I realized that my difference in culture sometimes caused me to struggle with the many unwritten rules that kind of help to boost the best leaders and teams and support them in thriving. So I combine my ability to understand systems with rigorous training to deeply, deeply, deeply understand people. And I launched the Lenserf Group. And in 11 years, we've helped leaders and teams in 33 countries to see beyond the obvious, to soar past limitations, and to exceed their potential. So feel free to share in the chat where you're tuning in from. I would love to hear any questions. This is not meant to be a monologue, so if you have questions, feel free to speak into the space and interrupt me at any given point in time. I welcome it. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. So again, today we are talking about leadership COGS and what do these letters stand for? Our goal is to talk about little micro steps you can take to accelerate your accountability. How many of you might start your day with just this to-do list, and the list feels so long that you don't know where you're going to start, and the sense of overwhelm begins right at the beginning of your day. When that happens, it can be derailing. We can feel disempowered before we've even begun. And so I'd like to introduce this COGS framework, which is really meant to introduce small bites. At any given point in time, when you start your day, your week, if you have a goal that you're working on, you can apply this framework. It is successful across the board. We've been using it for more than 11 years. It's been packaged for just that 11 years. And in that time, we've seen clients thrive simply by thinking about these 4 steps. And I'm not necessarily saying them in order, although I'd love for you to start with that C. And the C stands for celebrate. So while this seems superficial, celebrate, like what do you mean, Farnia? Celebrate. Celebration is about activation. So many powerful things happen when we take a moment to celebrate. There's dopamine that's released, and it's like that reward system activation it happens for us. Whether or not it's a big celebration, like a big party, or just taking a second to play your favorite song. When you celebrate and acknowledge what has happened, you activate your cogs, you activate yourself towards greater things. It makes you feel good. Like, who doesn't like a celebration? It makes you feel good. And studies have shown that when we celebrate, again, that dopamine, it strengthens the neural connections associated with those achievements. And this basically enhances our motivation. We'll want to do more. We'll want to try again. The next one up is building positive neural pathways. So that celebration is important for us to remember what it feels like to feel good. And that sounds simple, but it's so, so, so important. Next, celebration. It lowers our stress and cortisol levels. Any celebratory practice can really lower that cortisol that causes stress, that stress hormone, which leads to a whole bunch of cascading effects with our health, high blood pressure, lowered immune responses. All of those things are results of feeling stress and experiencing that cortisol effect. So when you celebrate, you reverse that. And positive reinforcement and celebration activates that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest system, and it promotes calm and well being. Next up, in celebration, we boost our emotional resilience. And that's where you want to be, is in boosting your emotional resilience. When you celebrate progress, your brain builds emotional resilience and increases the psychological flexibility. That's your capacity to adapt to challenges with a positive outlook instead of a negative outlook. Gratitude and celebration can even create like lasting structural changes in your prefrontal cortex and just in your disposition. Next up, so celebration also strengthens social bonds and releases oxytocin. So, that feeling of bonding that you might feel with a friend or family member. When you celebrate, you experience that. So, this is particularly powerful when we think about leaders and leadership, because as a leader, when you celebrate accomplishments, you're able to set that off, that sense of bonding for your team. It goes beyond just you. And then, last up, in celebration, we know that celebration results in increased productivity and goal achievement, which, as we think about accountability, accountability is usually tied to a goal or an intention. So in celebration, you increase the possibility that you will attain any given goal. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be work related, personal, doesn't matter what it is. You increase the possibility that something good can happen. It's not just about the fun, but it's about reinforcing the behavior. So you want to do it again, or you want to try again. So that's the C. I'd like to introduce the O. So O stands for ownership. And you all may have heard the term ownership, and a lot of people use it interchangeably with accountability. But when we're talking about ownership, we're talking about psychological ownership, that feeling that young children have very early, where they say, mine, mine, mine. They're like, don't touch the toy because it's yours or theirs. That mine, 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 that's associated with a task or a project. For homeowners, if you bought something new, car, anything new, that feeling of ownership, it is yours. There's a different kind of energy that comes out of individuals when they're experiencing the sense of ownership. You're more likely to invest effort and invest creativity. You're more likely to be driven by that motivation to see a task succeed. So imagine showing up to a project or to a team as a leader, feeling a sense of ownership. There's a groundedness that comes from that. It's, I'm in this not just for the short term, I'm in this for the long haul. Because whether or not the output, the short term output looks negative or positive, I'm still here because I'm here to completion. I'm here because this is mine. That same sense of mineness that comes with a new car, new shoes, new clothing. You experience ownership. That is what you're putting in to your team. Next up, accountability and performance. So, research indicates that accountability or ownership fosters improved individual and team performance. When people are held accountable, they're more likely to complete a task effectively. So, what this might mean is that deadlines are now met, and people are investing their time in prioritizing their responsibilities because they know someone's going to ask about this. Next up, we know that accountability has been shown to enhance learning as well. But let's talk about trust and transparency. So, accountability strengthens trust within teams and organizations when leaders and team members hold each other accountable in a transparent way, meaning this isn't a surprise what I'm asking you for. You might already know what you're on tap for. It's not a surprise. It builds a foundation of trust and a foundation of dependability. And this transparent accountability, such as open communication and shared goal setting. So it's not like you have a goal in a silo, like my goal is to win, win, win. It's what is the shared goal? What is the team goal? That helps to reduce misunderstanding and it helps to promote mutual respect among people on the team. So hopefully you guys are still with me here. All right. So what's up next? Next, we have just the impact on that team. So we want to go for mutual respect, but there's also a material impact on team dynamics and just the sense of psychological safety. So in 99, Edmondson had some research on psychological safety, and that suggested that teams thrive where there's a balance between accountability and support. So it's not just you've got to do this or else, meaning the accountability, like you've got to do this, you're on tap for it. But there's also that support structure. So you've got to do this and know that the organization or the rest of your team is standing behind you to support you as you embark on whatever journey you happen to be on. That causes psychological safety and encourages team members to take risks and express ideas without fear of blame, without fear of shame, without fear, which increases the probability that they're going to actually follow through. And that's what we're all going for here, right? That what you say you're going to do is what you actually do. And what we know about high performance and teams demonstrates that there's a mix of personal ownership, mutual accountability, and psychological safety that allows for both innovation and a lot of discipline. And discipline is not a negative thing. Next up, personal responsibility and just having an ownership culture. So when you think about the role of a leader and driving ownership and accountability, it starts with I. So that leader, you as a leader, stepping in and saying, I am going to take accountability. I will feel that sense of ownership. And if it starts with me, I'm modeling what happens for the rest. What we know is that organizations that have an ownership culture where employees act as though they are also responsible for the outcomes of their work. It's not just showing up to do a thing. It's not just, stamping repetitive work, thoughtless work. But employees show up with a sense of ownership. We know that there's a stronger sense and stronger alignment with organizational values and organizational goals. And those kinds of cultures empower employees, empower teams, because there's a sense that there are resources and the individual feels a sense of autonomy to recognize their own contribution. So if you as a leader are stepping in and modeling accountability, stepping into those shoes and saying, I am starting this culture of accountability. I want my folks to see what's important. I get to play this role in fostering that ownership for others. You will see a change in your team. See a change in people stepping up and not having answers and feeling okay, asking questions and just seeing a difference in the quality of output because the fear of retribution has gone down. So I hope you guys are still with me when we're talking about ownership. And the last part, as we wrap up ownership or accountability, is those systems. So it's one thing to say, oh, these are all the goals that someone has, or what are those systems that are in place that support individuals or even teams with managing to those goals? What plans are capturing all of those tasks for which people are accountable? In ownership, if there's no system, it's highly probable that something's going to fall between the cracks. And the system could be something as simple as just creating a list. If you get fancier, then you have a project plan, or you have a shared task list, or you're using some type of technology that's allowing people to see what everyone is accountable for. And when they have accountability reporting status. So, what is happening for you with this thing? Now, if you're getting really fancy and you have a whole project team, if you projectize your work and that's how you're managing your work, it's easier to see how accountability can be held because everyone's looking at the same thing. It becomes really difficult for confusion to exist because everyone's looking at the same thing. So when we think about behavior, I'll stress here in ownership, a key point of behavior is having a system. It doesn't have to be fancy. It could be, again, as simple as a list, a system that is holding you to account. This could be regular check ins, again, goal tracking, feedback loops, anything along those lines that is supporting that accountability or that sense of ownership. Now, I just want to caution you with this. Now, system sounds again really fancy, and some folks might be like, oh, that sounds really, really technical, Farnia. That's not where we're going with this. We're not going for rigid oversight where penalty ensues. We're going for simple measures that can easily be implemented to hold transparency, maintain that psychological safety, and keep folks moving towards their goals. So, next up, we've got the G. And what does G stand for? Well, G stands for the glue. So, in leadership COGS, the G is the glue. So, where are you stuck? What I know is when people feel stuck and they're unable to make progress, there is a sense of frustration and anxiety that happens. So, this might look like someone becoming visibly tense, irritable, or really easily upset. Or you might start to hear people just dwelling on negative thoughts or repeatedly analyzing the issue over and over and over again without any forward motion. That's a sign that someone is stuck. And if you're feeling this way, you're probably stuck. The other thing is when people feel stuck, sometimes they procrastinate. They delay in taking action or they make excuses. It's like, oh, I'll do that because, oh, someone came to my office. I just can't. And the excuses are to support them in avoiding that problem. They may focus on less critical tasks. You may focus on less critical tasks. And because you're focusing on something so small, you're not moving anything forward. And the real issue is festering. The real issue might just be getting a lot bigger. Another sign might be self doubt and second guessing. Like, oh, I made that decision and was it the right one? Was it the right one? I don't know. What was I thinking when I made that decision? What was I thinking when I did that thing? What was I thinking when I sent that? You fill in the blank on what the question might be. But when you get a sense of self doubt, it's highly probable that there's a sense of stuckness or someone is glued in place. Next up is when you're glued. It might also sound like asking a lot of questions for validation. Like, hey, how did that go? And asking 10 people that were just in the meeting, all 10 of them, how did that go? There's a line between feedback and validation. I'm just pointing that out because that might indicate a sense of stuck. So how do you get unstuck? Well, there are a couple things that can happen. Reflection and reframing. So when you're feeling the sense of glue, reflect what just happened. Who am I right now? Who did I intend to be when that thing happened? And how can I reframe this circumstance so that it's serving me and not penalizing me? Another thing is small steps, breaking down that big into something noticeably smaller and deciding to take one small step. What is the smallest thing you can do to get the cog moving again? And then lastly, there might be professional support available to unstick your stuck. Asking the question, who else might be able to help, is a powerful thing to do because it takes the stuckness out of you and puts it somewhere where somebody, something, there might be some resource that can support you in getting unstuck. Don't go in with the self doubt and second guessing, go out and see where there may be answers worthwhile of you taking that next step. And then lastly, we have got the S in leadership COGS. So as a leader, what is the S? The S is the stretch. So when you think about stretch, and people hear this terminology all the time, I'm going to set a stretch goal. And what is a stretch goal? A stretch goal is an ambitious objective that challenges you as a person. It might challenge your team to exceed your standard performance level and just really see how far. So for any of you that I'm standing up right now, and if I were to stretch my leg, I might feel, a little pull in my leg. And that's what stretch is about in leadership cogs. In any given situation, you have an opportunity to stretch. What does a stretch look like? And there are a couple elements to the stretch. First, enhance motivation and engagement. When you set a stretch just for yourself, like, oh, I'm a runner, I'm a recreational runner. So a stretch for me is adding on another mile, or adding on an uphill, or adding on a downhill. When you set a stretch, you inspire individuals or inspire yourself to push just a little bit further beyond what you're able to do by default. And that alone can help you to reach higher levels of excitement about what might happen. Like, what if you actually get that extra mile in? What if your team actually delivers on that additional feature on time? That stretch serves as a carrot of inspiration for folks to keep on moving. What else is in stretch? Well, in stretching, you find that there may be improved problem solving skills. When people are facing a challenge and looking at a target, it requires creative thinking and adaptability. You know, teams and individuals sometimes explore new solutions that might enhance their existing problem solving. It's like, how many times have we heard stories about trying to solve for one problem and actually realizing you've solved for another? But when folks sit in the innovation space where possibility is the expectation, something changes about how wide the boundaries of expectation just fall down. So anything becomes possible when we are stretching. What else is available in a stretch? Well, accelerated growth and development. Achieving something difficult requires growth in your skill set and a lot of resilience. I mean, just by the nature of the word stretch, resilience. And stretch goals push people out of their comfort zones, not in front of that warm fire on the picture there, out of your comfort zone, and it leads to faster development. So, as a leader, when you think about growing your people, how are you incentivizing them? How are you inspiring them to stretch? Because that's the fastest path to growth. What we know about a stretch is it also results in increased innovation. I talked about this a moment ago. When the usual methods just aren't cutting it, we know that Individuals and teams are encouraged to innovate because the usual doesn't work. And we all saw what happened during the pandemic. When the usual wasn't working, people got creative and incredible work got done in new ways. What else is in a stretch? Well, let's talk about high performance because this is what this is about. From a leadership perspective, we are going for higher performance standards. When you're stretching and a stretch goal isn't met, just aiming for it elevates performance. Like, I'm going to run one more mile. Aiming for that elevates the expectation of performance. And ultimately, the overall results raise the team standard for what can happen. And that's what we're going for. Raising the standard, raising the bar of innovation, creativity, raising the bar of expectation. And then lastly, and this is what we're all going for as leaders, is a stronger team, a stronger and more resilient team that's able to face new things in new ways and not feel a setback because something happened to them. So they're not standing in a victim status. They're standing as victors because what they've mastered as members of your team and you in your leadership is the ability to keep on going in spite of, the ability to innovate past all circumstances, the ability to turn a challenge into an opportunity. So that is our leadership COGS today. I encourage you to reach out, connect. I'm happy. I'm happy, 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 happy to respond to any of your inquiries. Thank you so much for joining today. It has been wonderful having you here. And I'm looking forward to being back for another episode of Leadership COGS and using this framework, celebration, ownership, getting out of being stuck, and stretching ourselves into successful outcomes. I'd love for you to join us again. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or just want to reach out, feel free to reach out at farnia@lenserfgroup.com. Thanks for being here. Take care and be well. Bye for now.